The story I want to tell you about is not a happy one. It is dark, it involves heavy themes not suitable for children, and it does not have a pleasant ending. It is a story about an empire and a family, a German family, whose humble beginnings and meteoric rise serve only to make their ultimate downfall that much more mysterious and unsettling. Today, I'd like to discuss with you the rise, the fall, and reported paranormal activities of the Lemp family. This is the story of the Lemp Mansion. I have always been fascinated by haunted buildings. I'd like to clarify that I do not believe or disbelieve in ghosts, but the subject of our video today is purportedly one of the most haunted locations in the US. I want to explore the family that once lived there, the history of their downfall, and the rumored ghostly goings-on of their mansion. This is a story of wealth, fame, and ultimately, the tragic self-inflicted deaths of 4 family members, leaving the Lemp family name no living heirs, but some would argue they are still here. We are going to explore these claims today, along with the history of this brewing titan. Why did they succeed? Why did they fail? Why did the family members take their lives one after another? And at the end of it all, we are going to take a trip to the Lemp Mansion ourselves and witness the most haunted location in all of St. Louis. The tragic story of the Lemps starts with Adam Lemp, who immigrated to the US from Germany in 1838. Before Adam established the foundations of his brewing empire, he started by opening a small grocery store. It was in this grocery store that Adam sold his own beer, brewed with his formula he brought from Germany. The beer he sold took off locally. German beer was rapidly growing in popularity at the time with a surge of German immigrants. So much so, in fact, that Adam closed his grocery store and instead opened a saloon, where he sold his beer and cultivated his establishment's reputation as a local hotspot. Adam Lemp's beer took off in popularity. This is likely due to the growing demand for light-bodied German beer, and Adam Lemp was the first to brew it in St. Louis. By 1850, there were 24 breweries operating in the city, and Adam Lemp opened his own brewery called the Western Brewery. Adam soon brought his son, William J. Lemp, under his wing and taught him the trade. William was made foreman and soon mastered the craft of brewing. Like father, like son, and soon William was promoted to plant superintendent. By all accounts, young William was a very ambitious and upstanding young man. He broke out on his own and partnered with another brewery in the area for a time, joined the military, and honorably served his nation. He even made it to the rank of orderly sergeant. Then, in 1861, he was married to Julia Fikert. Everything in his life pointed to a very bright future, and that would indeed be the case for a time. Only a year later, however, Adam Lemp died, leaving William in charge of the Western Brewery, and boy oh boy, did he do a good job. As I mentioned before, William Lemp was an ambitious man, and he soon devised plans for a much larger brewery situated above the natural cave system that runs under the city of St. Louis. There are many local stories regarding these caves, but for now, they offered the perfect space for lagering due to the low temperatures. His father had previously used these caves as well, but had to manage hauling his beer by wagon. The new location of the larger industrial brewery made this a seamless part of the brewing process. William created one of the most impressive breweries in the country, and he was on the cutting edge of the craft. In total, Lemp had invested about $200,000 in his new brewery, and it was the largest brewery in St. Louis. For reference, this is about $5.3 million today. Needless to say, William Lemp was a remarkable businessman, and by 1878, company sales totaled over $1.5 million. That's about $44.5 million today. Lemp maintained his edge going forward and was one of the first breweries to adopt the use of modern refrigeration in his production, greatly reducing the need for the subterranean cave system below the brewery. This investment soon led Western Brewery to become one of the first breweries to go national. Williams' company grew so large that he even established his own railroad to facilitate distribution. Things were really taking off, and the golden years were in full swing. Western Brewery was incorporated under the name William J. Lemp Brewing Company. Not only was William's business thriving, but he also had 8 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. The boys were William Jr., Louis, Charles, Frederick, and Edwin. The girls were Anna, Hilda, and Elsa. Many of these children will play important roles in the story going forward, so I wanted to introduce them here. For clarity, going forward, I will be referring to the 2 Williams as William Sr. and William Jr. Many of William Sr.'s children would at some point in their lives work for the family business, but for now, the first 2 will take the spotlight. William's son, William Lemp Jr., a very important figure in this story, became vice president. William Sr.'s other son, Louis Lemp, became superintendent. Both young men were very qualified for these positions and were well-experienced brewers in their own right. I'd like to explore their personalities for a minute so we can get an idea of who these young men were, especially William Jr., as he will play an important role in this story going forward. Given the vast success of their family's business, William Jr. and Louis took advantage of the lifestyle this wealth afforded them and took up many expensive interests. William Jr. enjoyed racing horses and was known as an extravagant socialite in the St. Louis community. While William was very well educated and had interests in things such as economics and chemistry, he was also known as a playboy and enjoyed partying through the night. It was even reported that he had a kind of club created in the caves that were once used for lagering. It included a pool, a bar, and a stage. William Jr. threw lavish parties in his subterranean getaway, and it was even rumored that he had a proclivity for the local ladies of the night. Louis Lemp, much like his older brother, also enjoyed racing horses and breeding them, and he was very active in St. Louis politics. Not only that, but Louis was reportedly an active aviation hobbyist. The 2 brothers seemingly destined for a life of renown and excess. There are no reports of Louis partying to the level of his brother, however. By 1892, the William J. Lemp Brewery had made the family practically royalty, with the brewery itself covering 3 city blocks and annual sales of $3 million. And that's not adjusted for inflation. I did the math, and it's about $100 million today. It was at this time that William Jr. would marry his first wife, Lillian Handlin. It would seem, however, that this marriage was destined for misery. Many suspected at the time that this union between William and Lillian was not meant to be, partly due to both parties being different religions, the Lemps being Lutherans and Lillian Handlin being a Catholic. With the newly incorporated name of William J. Lemp Brewing Company and the marriage of William Jr., by the turn of the century, the brewing company had experienced a phenomenal rise. I can't help but guess at how the family must have felt at this time. Going into the new century with brimming optimism and unshakable confidence. As we will soon discuss, however, this optimistic trajectory would not last. This would be the beginning of the end for the Lemps. As I mentioned before, William Jr. was the eldest son of William Sr. It has been argued, however, that Frederick, the 4th son, was in fact William Sr.'s favorite. When determining his heir, William Sr.'s first pick was in fact Fred and not William Jr. Fred was a devoted son and was overflowing with passion to be a successful brewer just like his father. Fred spent many hours working at the family company, diligently helping his father to pursue his goals. Unfortunately, in 1901, at the age of 27, Fred grew sick. It is unclear what illness had befallen him, but in October of that year, Fred took some time away to recover in Pasadena, California. At first, it seemed to help, and Fred experienced a slight rebound in his deteriorating health, but it wouldn't last. And just a few months later, in December 1901, at the age of 28, Frederick passed away of heart failure. Apparently, the culmination of multiple diseases the young man suffered from. This tragic and untimely death rocked the family, especially William Sr., who had just lost his favorite son and heir. I'd like to read a quote regarding Frederick's death and its impact on his father. Here is what brewery secretary Henry Kalkamp had to say. Suddenly, the grief of the father was most pathetic. He broke down utterly and cried like a child. It was the first death in the family. He took it so seriously that we feared it would completely shatter his health and looked for the worst to happen. With William Sr.'s declining mental health, another terrible blow would come. On January 1st, 1904, when his best friend, Captain Frederick Pabst, passed away. In just a few short years, William Sr. had lost two of the people he cared most about in the world. As a result, William Sr.'s passion for his work died as well. It was said by those around him at this time that William Sr. seemed nervous and distracted. It was apparent to all those around him that he was not coping well. On the morning of February 13th, 1904, William Lemp Sr. sat down for breakfast shortly after 7 a.m. After breakfast, William Sr. made his way back up to his bedroom after a minor complaint of not feeling well. At 9:30 a.m., William Sr. took out a .38 caliber revolver and put it to his head. A servant girl heard the shot and immediately ran to the bedroom, only to find the door locked. None of the other Lemps were in the house at the time, and so the young servant ran to the brewery, about a block and a half away, to alert William Sr.'s sons. Breaking down the door, they found William Sr. still alive, lying on his bed, covered in blood, and a large hole in the side of his head. Physicians were called, but it was determined that there was nothing they could do to prolong his life. William J. Lemp Sr. died at 10:15 a.m., 45 minutes after pulling the trigger. William J. Lemp Sr. was said to have been a highly respected man, who was fair in his dealings with all, and many admired him. He was described as being humble, modest, and popular with all. Not only did he establish one of the nation's first brewing empires, he was also an active donor to many charities. His death was truly another tragic blow to the community, and especially his family. This morbid chain of events would not end there, however. William Sr.'s widow, Julia, just 2 years after her husband's death, in 1906, would pass away from cancer in the family mansion. I wish I could speak on Julia Lemp in more detail, as I did with William Sr., but she led a much more reserved and guarded life, and not much is known about her. After Julia's death, the Lemp fortune was dispersed between their remaining children. Julia's death was especially difficult for William Jr., the new patriarch of the Lemp family, who was the closest with his mother Julia. And unfortunately for William Jr., things were only going to continue spiraling down. On March 19, 1908, Lillian filed for divorce. This divorce became a very public and scandalous affair as the couple fought for custody over their son, William J. Lemp III, who was only 8 years old. Every detail of this trial was published in the papers, very similar to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard of today. I don't want to go into too many details regarding the trial because it is difficult to know what is true, and I do not want to speculate or propagate ancient rumors that may have no truth to them. The only thing I will say is that it is very clear the marriage between Lillian and William Jr. was not a happy one. Lillian won custody of their son and went to live with her parents. William Jr. retreated to the countryside outside the city and built himself a large home overlooking the Mississippi River. He called this estate All's Well, the irony of which is apparent. In the year 1911, the Lemp Mansion, the home in which both William Lemp Sr. and Julia Lemp died, was converted into the offices of William J. Lemp Brewing Company. William J. Lemp was remarried to Ellie Limburg, and the couple retreated to their country getaway of All's Well. Not all was well, however, with the brewery. William Jr. had lost his passion for the company, and the company facilities were soon outdated and falling behind. But what would finally spell the end of the Lemp brewing industry was in fact a combination of William Jr.'s lethargy and prohibition. Despite the illegalization of alcohol during this time period, it was not necessarily a death sentence for all breweries. Many opted to instead brew near beer, which was the exact same beer but with the alcohol removed. Lemp attempted to go down this route as well, and created its non-alcoholic beer called Cerva. This endeavor ended up not being as profitable as hoped, and production was halted in June 1919. Given the family's enormous wealth, instead of fighting to find a profitable avenue for the business during these times, William J. Lemp Jr. decided to suddenly close down. A former employee said, "We just went to work one morning and found the place locked up. It was never opened again." It seems that a combination of William Jr.'s disinterest and prohibition finally brought down the great Lemp brewing empire. Now, all that was left was for the family to spend the rest of their days enjoying their wealth. Unfortunately for them, however, this would not necessarily be the case. Shortly after the closure of the brewery, Elsa Lemp, youngest daughter of William Lemp Sr., would be the second Lemp to commit apparently. I say apparently because the circumstances surrounding her death are a bit odd. After her father's death, Elsa became the wealthiest unmarried woman in St. Louis. In 1910, she had married Thomas Wright, a successful businessman in his own right and president of the Moore Jones Brass and Metal Company. This marriage, however, much like her brother William Jr.'s first wife, was not as happy as she probably had hoped. Elsa filed for divorce in February 1919. This divorce was not quite the scandal that William Jr.'s was, and it played out behind closed doors without many details being exposed to the public. The case, however, was rather astonishing because it only took an hour after being filed for the divorce to be granted on the basis of general indignities. Despite this, the couple were remarried just a couple years later. Sadly, however, this decision would prove fatal, as only 11 days later, on March 19th, Elsa was found dead with a gunshot wound to the heart. One of the maids that was present in the home at the time had this to say: "At about 8:45, I heard Mr. Wright scream my name, that something terrible had happened. I saw Mr. Wright come running from his room. I went in there and found Mrs. Wright, still alive, with her eyes partly open." It was said that none could say why Elsa had wanted to take her own life, and she had given no prior indication that she was contemplating the act. Another strange detail was that the police were not made aware of her death for at least 2 hours, and it didn't even come from Mr. Wright. Doctors and the rest of the Lemp family arrived at the home, and William Lemp Jr., in a moment of seeming prophetic insight, said, "That's the Lemp family for you." At this point, it was said that William Lemp was filled with sadness. After the untimely death of his brother, father, mother, and sister, along with the downfall of the family business under his command, there were many potential sources for this depression. William Jr. decided to liquidate the family company, saying, "We have done nothing since Prohibition. I am tired of seeing all the weeds in the courtyard and dust upon the windows. I am out of the brewing business for good. I am 54 years old now, and it is time to quit. It seems to me that the failure of the brewery weighed heavily on William's heart. The sprawling brewery, which was once valued at $7 million, went up for auction. If you thought things couldn't get worse for the Lemps at this point, the auction concluded, and the once grand and industrious brewery sold for an astonishing $585,000. Keep in mind, it had been previously valued at $7 million. William Jr. commented on it, saying, "How would anybody feel to get 8 cents on the dollar for a great plant like that?" Lemp had hit the bottom, his family broken and his family's legacy ruined, and a great part of that being a result of his own actions. The responsibility of the downfall of his family's brewing empire laid heavy on his shoulders, and William Jr.'s health took a turn for the worse. On December 29, 1922, when brewery secretary Henry Valcamp showed up for work at 9 a.m., William Lemp Jr. was in his office. The offices at this time were located in the Lemp mansion, the once family home. The next to show up for work that day was Miss Olivia Burchek, the stenographer for the brewery and William's personal secretary. Both recall that Lemp was not feeling well and did not look to be in good shape. Sometime later in the morning, Miss Burchek asked Mr. Lemp a question regarding some work she was doing, and she described the events as follows. First, he said it was all right, what I had. Then he said, "On second thought, I think you had better go downstairs and ask Mr. Norton, the brewery architect." While I was on my way downstairs, I heard this noise. It didn't sound like a shot to me, because they had been doing some work in the basement, and I thought the men had dropped something. It sounded like a piece of iron falling. I went to talk to Mr. Norton, and when I came up, a porter had Mr. Lemp lying on a pillow. The porter had heard the noise from down in the basement and came upstairs. He was the only one who realized it was a shot. When he came in the office, he didn't see anything in there, and he had to walk up to Mr. Lemp's desk, and he saw his feet lying under the table. He started around back of Lemp's desk and got to Mr. Lemp, just as he was giving 3 gasps. He called for help, and the men from the other side of the office came over and laid him on this pillow, and he was on the pillow when I came in the room. William Lemp Jr. had shot himself in the chest with a .38 caliber revolver, the same caliber that his late father had used as well. When Valcamp arrived to the Lemp's office, he found him still alive, barely hanging on. By the time the police arrived, however, William Lemp Jr. was pronounced dead by Dr. F.W. Ebikin. There was no note. William Lemp III, William Jr.'s son, arrived on the scene and upon seeing his father's body, cried, "You knew I knew it. I was afraid this was coming." It seems that many had noticed a deterioration in Lemp's mental health over the past few years. With prohibition and the decline of the Lemp family business and name, many feel that William Lemp Jr. took this to heart. William Lemp Jr. was interred in the Lemp family mausoleum in Bellefontaine Cemetery, along with his father, mother, brother, and sister. With the death of William Lemp Jr., 2 brothers remained, Edwin and Charles Lemp. Neither brother were involved in the family business anymore. Charles was busy pursuing a career in banking, and Edwin a quiet life on his farm. With both brothers pursuing their own interests, the death of William appeared to be the final nail in the coffin of the Lemp brewing empire. William Lemp III, William Jr.'s son, was not immune to the misfortunes of his father, and he seemed to continue the tradition. Shortly after losing his father's vacation home, Allswell, to the Board of Finance and the Methodist Episcopal Church that foreclosed on the family home, Agnes, William's wife, filed for a decree of separate maintenance, which is essentially a divorce, but legally the couple are still married. Despite these trying years, William III decided to give the family brewing empire one more chance at revival. In 1939, William III teamed up with Central Breweries and allowed them to use the Lemp name to brand their beer. And so, Lemp beer hit the market once again. Central became the William J. Lemp Brewing Company, and a huge marketing campaign was initiated. Everything was running smoothly, and the beer was doing well. This luck would not last, however, and not even a year later, financial troubles were rearing their terrifying head. Debts were mounting, including taxes owed. Unable to pay, the brewery stocks were prevented from being traded on December 19, 1940. Shortly after, the fledgling Lemp Brewing Company, with a big name, had to file for bankruptcy. M's Brewing Company took over, dropping the Lemp name and discontinuing the use altogether. Unfortunately, only a few years after this blow, William III suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage and collapsed on the sidewalk. At the age of 42, William III's tragic death ended any hopes of a brewing comeback. The days of tragedy were not over for the Lemp family, however, and we now need to turn our attention to one of William Jr.'s remaining brothers, and spoiler alert, Charles follows in his family's footsteps. Earlier in Charles Lemp's life, he worked for the family company, making it as high up as vice president. He then made a career shift to banking and was not involved in the brewing industry for some time. Charles eventually became the president of the Indemnity Company of America. Additionally, he was a high-up member of the Democratic Party and took a keen interest in politics. Needless to say, even without being a part of his family's brewing empire, Charles found success in other ventures. In 1929, Charles moved back home to the Lemp Mansion, the location of many family tragedies. It would be here that he'd meet a similar end. As he aged, Charles grew more and more closed off. He lived completely alone in a large Lemp mansion, except for a few servants and the rumored and hidden illegitimate son of his brother William Jr. We will talk about this later. As I mentioned before, Charles would follow in his family's footsteps. In 1949, and at the age of 77, while suffering from illness, Charles Lemp went into the basement of the mansion where he shot his dog. Then he went back upstairs into his bedroom where he took his own life. This makes him the fourth Lemp to commit suicide, and the third to do so in the family home. First, William Lemp Sr., Elsa, William Jr., and now Charles. Charles Lemp was found by Mr. Bittner, one of his assistants who was returning to grab the dishes after breakfast from Charles's bedroom until he noticed the food was untouched by the door. Upon entering the bedroom, Mr. Bittner found Charles lifeless in bed with a .38 revolver in his hand. Charles was the only of the four Lemps to leave a note, reading, "In case I am found dead, blame it on no one but me." Which is strange to me. In case I am found dead almost makes it sound as if he wasn't sure if he was going to die. Either way, with the death of Charles, his brother Edwin became the last remaining Lemp. Edwin was unique among the Lemps. He did not pursue a lavish lifestyle or the trappings of wealth and power. Instead, he retired from the family brewing business in 1913 at the age of 33 to live a simpler life, away from the chaos of the American dream. Edwin was quoted by a newspaper as saying, "It was simply that I saw no need to make more money. It seems to me that this is the curse of America. Everyone is always making more money. I was confident that I could organize my life in a way I wanted to. Of course, it was very fortunate in having an income." Edwin spent his days exploring nature. It was during this exploration that he discovered the site of his future home on top of a bluff overlooking the Merrimack River. Edwin built a beautiful estate that he named Cragwald. Edwin hosted many animals on his outdoor getaway and even developed a renowned talent for cooking. Perhaps it is this wisdom that ensured his long-lived life in contrast to the rest of his family. Edwin lived to the age of 90 years old and seemed to be the only of his brothers to escape the curse of the Lemp family. With Edwin's death, the Lemp name died with him, but it is often said that the Lemps have not left at all, and in fact, still walk the very halls they once lived. The Lemp Mansion, site of 3 of the Lemps, along with a number of other gruesome tales that I will get into, is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in America. After the Lemp family no longer owned the large home, it was turned into a boarding house for a while. In 1975, however, it was purchased by an entrepreneur named Richard D. Pointer, who wanted to turn the mansion into a restaurant. Mr. Pointer and his family very quickly became aware of the apparent otherworldly nature of this building. Mr. Pointer recalls that, "I was painting a bathroom by myself. There was no one in the house, and I felt somebody behind me, watching me. I mean, it was a terrible feeling, the most burning sensation you could have. I get goosebumps now just thinking about it. I turned around, and nothing was there. I started working again, and I got the same feeling. So, without looking behind me, I cleaned my paintbrushes and got the hell out of there." The presence of the supernatural is reported to have continued to make itself known. There were the stereotypical reports of doors opening on their own, TVs turning on and off, etc. But the Pointers noted that it had seemed like the house wanted to assist them in its renovation. Many times, antiques original to the home would turn up right when they were needed, and miraculously in amazing condition despite the years of neglect. Old original oak doors, chandeliers, and silver had been stored in the bowels of the mansion for years and would show up right when the renovators needed it. Despite the seemingly friendly nature of some of the hauntings, Claude Breckwald, noted St. Louis artist that was hired to restore the hand-painted ceilings, had a ghostly experience that left him shaken. He reported his experience saying, "I was on the scaffolding, lying on my back painting the ceiling in the dining room, when I got the feeling that someone was staring at me. It felt as though they were in the hallway just outside the room, but I couldn't see anything through the frosted glass doors, which were closed. I went on working, and about an hour later, the same feeling returned. It was weird. I felt like I just had to get out right then." It's important to note that Claude was completely unaware of the other supernatural experience had by others in the home, and to him, this was just a regular job. After this experience, Claude packed up his things and left, and noted that despite spending a lot of time in the old vintage homes in St. Louis with lots of history, none have left him with the ghostly feeling that the Lemp Mansion did. Richard R. Dick Pointer, the son of Mr. Pointer, lived alone in the house for several years while the renovation continued. Dick told one story that is actually pretty scary. He and his Doberman Shadow were asleep in bed one night when they were both startled awake by a loud bang on the bedroom door, like somebody had kicked it. Both Dick and Shadow investigated the home and found nothing out of place. All doors and windows were locked and nobody else was in the house. Another story Dick told happened when he and an employee were working to close the restaurant one evening in 1981. While it was only the two of them in the building, suddenly they heard the piano play a few notes on its own. Again, the two investigated the building and found nobody else inside. Dick was adequately frightened enough to leave the lights on that night when he went to sleep. Another incident involved Patty, Mr. Pointer's daughter. Patty was working to resupply the storeroom's liquor supply. Patty was going back and forth from the storeroom to the sidewalk to carry cases back and forth. During one of these short trips, upon returning to the storeroom, the door would not open. Upon further investigation, Patty realized that somehow the two deadbolts were locked, and it is important to note that this is not possible without the keys. Patty, confused, went to get the keys, and upon returning once again, the deadbolts were open. Patty, who had experienced many ghostly goings-on during her time working in the mansion, had one experience that left her more perplexed and shaken than most. Patty and Dick were at the bar enjoying a few drinks after the restaurant had closed. Patty was behind the bar, looking into the dining room while Dick had his back to the dining room. Dick was speaking to Patty when suddenly Patty looked shocked. A candle on the mantel in the dining room was suddenly lit on its own. The oddest part being that candles were only lit for dinner services, and on this Sunday, the restaurant had only served lunch, so no candles had been lit. It was not only the family, however, that experienced the supernatural in the Lemp mansion, and Mr. Pointer notes that he did have a difficult time keeping employees on staff. Bonnie Strayhorn was a former waitress who recalls a rather chilling story one day while she prepared to open the restaurant. Early one morning, I was going through the house, making sure that everything was as it should be before the restaurant opened, when I noticed a dark-haired gentleman seated at a table. In what was originally the Lemp family dining room, he was facing away from me, so all I could see was an outline of his shoulders and head. I was surprised to see someone in the restaurant so early, but when I went over to say hello and to ask if he would like a cup of coffee, he did not answer me. I looked away momentarily to turn on a light switch, and when I turned around again, he had vanished. Needless to say, Bonnie found this rather unsettling and immediately went looking for a new job. Many other occurrences happened in the home over the years. A large, heavy drawer opening on its own in the kitchen when nobody was in there, people hearing voices, ghostly winds and chills suddenly appearing when no door or window were open. There's almost too many to go over them all. There is one rumor that I want to discuss that I have not found substantiated by any historical biographies of William Jr., but it is talked about quite a bit when discussing the ghosts of the Lemp mansion. Apparently, the story goes that William Jr., being the wild partier and playboy that he was, conceived an illegitimate son. This son was born with Down syndrome, and it is said that William Jr. kept him locked up in the attic of the Lemp mansion in the servant quarters for his whole life to avoid any public embarrassment. At the time, children and passerbys claimed to be able to see his face looking out of the attic window from the street. Locals began calling him the monkey-faced boy, and rumors of his existence continued to spread. It is said that William Jr.'s son lived in that attic his whole life and died up there. Some claim to this day that you can still see his face in the window from the street, and some have claimed to have left toys in the attic for his spirit, and when they return, the toys have been moved, as if played with. The last story that I want to recount for you is one of the most chilling records of ghostly activity in the home. The man who told the story was residing at the home at the time, and it took place in the basement by a massive fireplace. He said that, very late, after midnight, I went out through the large room, and as always, I was careful to look around and up the stairs. No one was there except myself, so this night I went on into the bath, and then I came out. I looked around again, only myself was there. But as I was passing the stairs, there was a well-dressed man. He did not move. He suddenly appeared there. He looked steadily right at me, smiling. He wore a neat, expensive, dark suit. His shoes were especially clean and new-looking. I have never seen any pictures of a Lemp family member, but I know this man was the ghost of Charles Lemp, who died in that basement place. He was not large, just about 5 feet, 7 inches tall. His features were small, with medium complexion. His hair was dark and combed straight back. All this took only a second to see. This man wanted me to see him. I panicked and took one step to run, but then I stopped. I wanted to appear unafraid. As I stopped, I turned to look at him again. He was not there. He simply vanished. He did not go upstairs or anywhere, for I only looked away about a blink of an eye. No doubt he could still see me, but I could not see him. I made a bolt for my apartment door and went in and locked it after me, scared, cold and shaking. Now that you know the history of the Lemp family and mansion, I think it is time we paid a visit. I embarked on this adventure with 3 others. I want to start by stating that I do not necessarily believe or disbelieve in ghosts, and we did not enter the historic home with any intentions of ghost hunting or disrespecting the dead. We went in with a simple goal of documenting the house, its architecture, and our experience. My mindset was that if something happened, it happened, but that we would not try to provoke anything. Without spoiling anything, the night started off fine, but took a turn, and ends with an emergency trip to the hospital. Alright, so I'm out here outside the Lemp mansion. As of 3 p.m. today, they are handing me the keys, and me and a few friends will be the only people with access to the entire building for the entire night. There it is. And I am not going in with the intention of provoking or disturbing or disrespecting anything. We are going to spend the night in the house, get some footage of the home, the historical features, and we're just going to see what happens. We're just going to exist in the space and not provoke, not disrespect, see what happens. But I'm excited. As of 3 p.m. today, we will be the only ones in this house, in the Lemp mansion, so I think it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to it. I want to apologize in advance for any potentially poor video quality. I am by no means an experienced video or audio technician, and much of what you are about to see was recorded using our personal phones. I will admit, entering the home did have a rather eerie feeling to it, though I think this is likely due to all of the research I had done and my knowledge of the rumors and history of this historic building. There to greet us at the door was Patty Pointer, the daughter of Richard Pointer, who had purchased the home in the 1970s. Patty gave us a tour of the home, pointing out various locations of interest.
About some stuff. So then here you have the main dining room, and this would have been the main dining room with the Lemps as well. But something that's interesting is the Bavarian huntsman and the German pointer hunting dogs, which my father, who bought this building in 1973, his last name was Pointer. So it was a boarding house at that time, and so lots of the rooms were chopped up into smaller rooms, and people lived here after the Second World War. After they came back from the war, there had been a housing shortage because all the production was spent on the war, and so a lot of big old houses were turned into boarding houses. So this is the main parlor, and this is actually where William Lemp, who shot himself in 1922, William Lemp Jr., was laid out for his funeral in this room. And there were 3 suicides in the house. Let's see, it'd be William Lemp Sr. in 1902, William Lemp Jr. in 1922, and Charles Lemp in 1949. So this was, we believe, Charles Lemp's room, and he lived here until 1949, and he committed suicide, which also he had a Doberman Pinscher dog, which he shot before he shot himself. So many people think there's a ghost dog. Okay, this is William. So something that William Lemp Sr. was kind of an old German stalwart, hardworking guy. Had the 9 children, so this would have been the boys' kind of dormitory. But they were not as ambitious as their father was, and so it's said that he would wake them up real early in the morning and abruptly, like kicking on the doors, open them, get up, little bad boy. And then one time I had some people staying here, and they complained that someone had been kicking on the bottom of their door throughout the evening, and then they looked out there real fast and couldn't see anyone, except there's a tapestry hanging here. I'm going to put the keys in the doors. This is the room that purportedly William Lemp Sr. committed to in 1902, and then Charles in 1949, and then William Jr., William II, as it were, in one of the dining rooms downstairs.
Okay.
Okay, did that help you a little bit?
Yeah, that did. That was great. Thank you.
Okay, so
Once the tour had completed, Patty handed us the keys, and our exploration of the home could officially begin. We started by just walking through the home, trying our best to film everything. Upon entering the front double doors, the first thing you will be met with is a staircase leading up to the second floor. Surrounding this staircase are 5 rooms, 4 of which have been turned into dining rooms for the restaurant, and 1 which has been converted into a bar. These dining rooms are the location of the hand-painted murals on the ceilings, which were the focal point of the paranormal experience recounted by Claude Breckwald that we discussed earlier. Many old and rather grand fireplaces can be seen in these rooms, and the tall ceilings and windows give the home a feeling of immensity and foreboding that I found rather beautiful. It truly would be amazing to witness this historic monument with the original furnishings and styles of the 20th century when it was built. Moving to the second floor, we are met with a rather unsettling hallway with a piano original to the Lemp family at the end. Surrounding this hallway are 4 bedrooms, one of which was locked off to visitors, so we will only be discussing the other 3. And these 3 bedrooms are rather important because they are the locations of all 3 in the home. I am not entirely clear on which bedrooms belong to which Lemp family members at the time of their deaths, but with the information given to me by Patty, I believe we can make some educated guesses. The main bedroom, adorned with a very impressive bathroom, I believe would have been the bedroom of both William Sr. and possibly the office of William Jr. at the time of their deaths. The smaller bedroom of the 3, located at the back of the house, was likely Charles Lemp's room, where he took his own life after taking the life of his dog in the basement. These rooms serve as the primary attraction for overnight guests at the Lemp mansion. Many ghost hunters and enthusiasts book rooms here for a chance to experience the supernatural, much like myself in this scenario, I might add. Again, the tall ceilings and windows in these rooms really help instill the feeling that you are small. One room I'd like to discuss in particular was the bathroom that is attached to what the Pointers have termed the Lavender Suite, which I believe is the master bedroom that William Sr. took his own life in. The large marble bathroom, while beautiful and lavish, felt very cold and unwelcoming. Out of all of the rooms in the house, this is the one I felt the second most uncomfortable in. We then made our way up to the attic. Attics in general typically feel a little scarier than most other places in a house, whether that be due to the typically more confined layouts, maybe an unconscious fear of heights, or just that attics attract more ghosts. However you'd like to explain it, I do feel that attics have a tendency to make people uncomfortable. In the attic of the Lemp mansion, there are 3 bedrooms, potentially 4, but one room was closed off to us, just like on the second floor. One of the bedrooms is listed as Elsa's suite, and I do want to be transparent that Elsa did not die in the mansion, and her /homicide, I have my suspicions, took place in her own residence with her husband. I mentioned earlier The large marble bathroom on the second floor was the room in which I felt the second most uncomfortable. The attic is where I genuinely felt the most uneasy. And again, I want to reiterate that I do not believe nor disbelieve in ghosts. But in the attic, I did feel unsettled, and I can tell you I would not have liked being up there by myself. It is also here that the rumored child of William Jr. was said to have lived, and many guests leave toys for him to play with. While none of the toys moved during our stay, something weird did happen in the attic. And while I personally believe this is just a technical issue with my friend and cameraman's brand new gimbal that he had bought for this trip, I want to show it here for the sake of transparency, as others may interpret it differently. When filming one of the bedrooms at the far end of the attic, the gimbal started acting erratically, spinning in circles and jerking around. Like I said, I feel that this is likely just a technical glitch that others can probably explain in the comments, but I wanted to include it for transparency reasons. While the attic was by far the most haunted feeling place in the house, we did not witness anything that jumped out at us as paranormal. We mostly spent the evening exploring the mansion, recording audio and video, and really just hanging out with each other. We ordered pizza and even played hide and seek. It was at this time around 9:30 p.m. that I decided to record an update video. I will play that for you now. So it's 9:40 right now. We've been in the mansion for about 6.5 hours at this point. We've played hide and seek, we've walked around, we've looked at all the bedrooms, we've done some footage, and we've had some pizza. We haven't really seen anything supernatural at this point. The lights flickered a few times, but it's an old building. So I think we're gonna just kind of continue to exist, hang out for a bit, see what happens. Oh, and I do want to mention, so this is the bed that William Jr. Took his own life in. This is one of the 3 rooms that occurred in this house. There's another room across the hall, I will show that in the video, and another room down the hall where 2 other took place, and I will include those in the video. But so far we've been in the house for about 6.5 hours. Haven't seen anything too spooky, nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe a few flickering lights, a few noises, but that's about it. We played hide and seek earlier, it was fun. We're gonna continue to get as much footage as we can while we hang out, see if anything happens. Like I said, we're not specifically ghost hunting, we're just kind of existing in this space, filming as we can, trying to see if we see anything. So that's it. I will keep you all updated as the night goes on. That is my 9:30 p.m. Update. After taking this video, we decided to explore the basement of the Lemp mansion. This is reportedly the location of many paranormal sightings and where Charles Lemp shot his dog right before taking his own life. The basement is the location of the kitchens used to prepare food for the restaurant above, so much of this area is dedicated to food service, and due to the dim lighting, a lot of my footage is pretty low quality. But I wanted to point this area out, as I believe this is the location that Patty's story took place, the story I told earlier about the liquor supply room locking on its own. After that, we took a little bit of a break from recording. We decided that we had spent the entire night thus far recording everything and approaching the home from a documentarian viewpoint. So, at this time, we turned off the cameras and just hung out in this historic home. We took a few shots here and there, of course, but at this point, we were just enjoying each other's company and eating pizza. I don't want to say I was disappointed at this point that we had not had any supernatural encounters, as we did not go into this experience specifically seeking anything out. But I did find myself hoping something would happen. A door opening on its own, footsteps coming from the attic, anything to bring a flare of excitement to our quickly fading night in the haunted house. While the gimbal going haywire on us could be interpreted as supernatural if you were so inclined, nothing else stands out. Despite this, however, I want to be honest that the eerie feeling I felt when first entering the home never truly went away. I thought that as we spent more time in the mansion, I'd get used to it, and my brain would settle down and the environment would become normalized. This did not happen, however, and as night fell, I found myself more and more unwilling to be alone. The looming reality that I would need to sleep in this historic building became an uncomfortable anxiety that was steadily worsening as the night dragged on. It would have been at this point that I made another update video like the 9:30 p.m. video I included earlier. But as I alluded to at the beginning of this section, not everything went on as planned. Before I could sit down to record said update video, I was rushed to the hospital. And I just want to say here that what happened next was entirely my fault, and some would argue I deserved it. I believe it was around 11 p.m. during the aforementioned break we were taking. My brother was in the bedroom he had selected for the night, laying in bed and scrolling through his phone as we all started mentally preparing for the fact that we'd soon have to try falling asleep in this haunted building. I, being an idiot, decided I wanted to try and jump scare my brother. Crouching down, I crawled from the hallway through my brother's open doorway into the foot of his bed as quietly as I could. Taking a moment to stifle my laughter, I jumped up with a loud "Ha!" Before I could process anything, something had hit my face. My brother, being completely and utterly terrified, had thrown his phone, hitting me dead center on my upper lip under my nose. I remember feeling the warmth of blood running down my face and thinking my nose had been broken. Cupping my hands under my chin, I ran across the hallway to the lavender suite, which has the attached grand marble bathroom. Making it to the sink, I let my hands down and watched as the sink was painted crimson. Looking in the mirror, I realized right then that I had to go to the hospital. I want to give a quick disclaimer that the following section will involve brief descriptions and images of injury and gore that may be uncomfortable for some. My lip had been split completely through, from the base of my nose all the way down. Getting to the hospital, the doctor had a hard time believing that a phone had done this. My brother and 2 other friends that had joined me on this journey sat with me in the hospital room for a whole 2 hours it took to stitch my face back together. My wife had joined us as well, which was very nice of her. I take full responsibility for what happened, and in no way is my brother to blame. What would you do if somebody jump scared you in a haunted house? So unfortunately, our night was cut short, and we did not get to spend the night in the mansion. We made some fun memories though, some painful ones as well, and ultimately left the Lemp mansion relatively unscathed. Part of me wishes that we had seen something paranormal or caught it on camera, but at the same time, if I had, then I'm not sure anyone would have believed us either. So maybe this was for the best. I hope you enjoyed the story of the Lemp family, their world-famous brewery, and their mysterious mansion. I had so much fun making this mini documentary, and I want to say thank you for watching. Maybe one day I will visit again and finally complete my stay at the Lemp Mansion.